Good evening, here's Top News English newsletter starting with headlines. Syrian troops retake Homs gas field from ISIS militants. Israel shells southern Gaza amid extended truce. Egypt army says 14 jihadists killed in Sinai. And 12 dead in Yemen suicide car bomb hits. Welcome to details. More foreign-backed militants in Syria have been killed and wounded in the continued counter-terrorism military operations across the country. In Damascus countryside, army units destroyed a number of militants' vehicles and killed all of the militants inside them on the road linking Zakia and Khan Sheikh. The army unit carried out several operations in the area between Al-Mliha and Jisrin, killing scores of militants and destroying their weaponry and equipment, including a mortar. The army continued pursuing militants in Jobar neighborhood and Duma, killing and injuring a number of them. An army unit destroyed a militant hideout in Harbin and Daraya, killing several militants and destroying their equipment and weapons. In Quneitra countryside, army units killed and wounded a number of militants after destroying 4 of militants' cars to the south of Ain al-Darb. A militant group was also targeted to the west of Rasm al-Aqra. In Daraa countryside, an army unit demolished a number of militants' vehicles that were loaded with ammunition, killing all the militants inside. A military source said that army units killed militants and wounded others after targeting their concentrations in Daraa eastern countryside. In Palmyra countryside, army units eliminated a number of militants and destroyed an armored vehicle and a pickup equipped with a heavy machine gun while targeting their gatherings. A number of militants were killed and injured and their weaponry were destroyed in Homs countryside. A number of militants also were eliminated and their criminal tools were destroyed in different areas in Aleppo city and its countryside. An army unit killed a number of militants and destroyed a rocket launcher and a car equipped with heavy machine gun in Ras al-Abbud area in Aleppo countryside. Meanwhile, a unit of army forces in Deir ez-Zor destroyed a warehouse of weapons and ammunition, 2 cars loaded with 2 heavy machine guns, and killed a number of militants, most of them non-Syrian. Moreover, in Syria, Syrian army troops have recaptured a Sha'ar gas field in Homs province from the so-called Islamic State of Iraq and Syria terrorist group 10 days after it fell into the hands of the militants, a new report says. Since this morning, there has been fighting around the Sha'ar field between Syrian forces and ISIS. The army has succeeded in ejecting the militants, and it now controls the site and the surrounding hills. Head of the so-called Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, Rami Abdulrahman, said, ISIS militants, after taking the gas field, massacred scores of Syrians, most of whom were executed. The observatory last Saturday said that it had documented the death of 270 people killed in the fighting or executed since the ISIS militants seized the Sha'ar field. In Gaza, Israeli forces have shot a man dead and shelled the southern Gaza Strip amid reports that a humanitarian ceasefire had been extended for 4 hours until midnight. Ashraf al-Qudra, spokesman for the Palestinian Ministry of Health, said in a statement that Naim Abdelaziz Abu Tahir, 36, was shot dead by Israeli forces in eastern Deir al-Balah. Israeli forces has also shelled an area east of Rafah late Saturday. The attacks came after Israeli media reported that officials had agreed to extend a humanitarian truce for 4 hours. The truce was initially scheduled to end at 8 p.m. but was to be extended until midnight. There was no formal announcement for the extension of the ceasefire, and Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zuhri said that the resistance movement had not been consulted about the extension. Meanwhile, Al-Qassam Brigade said in a statement that it targeted Tel Aviv with 2 M75 rockets at 8:40 p.m., 40 minutes after the end of the official ceasefire period. Minutes after the official ceasefire expired, Israeli media reported that mortar shells hit open areas in Al-Shqul Regional Council. Additionally, rocket sirens were heard in various towns in southern Israel. The Palestinian death toll in Gaza rose to well over 1,000 on Saturday as search teams recover bodies from the destroyed buildings during the brief ceasefire. Some 151 bodies were recovered during the 12-hour window, according to the Ministry of Health. More than 6,000 Palestinians have been injured in the offensive. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has welcomed the broadly observed 12-hour humanitarian pause in Gaza Strip and called for a 7-day humanitarian ceasefire, stressing the urgent need to end the blockade on the sliver. The Secretary General urgently appeals once again to all parties to declare a 7-day humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza as a prelude to renewing a political process as the only way of achieving a durable peace. He strongly urged all parties to, at the very minimum, extend the pause expiring later today. Ban reiterated that any peace effort that does not tackle the root causes of the crisis will do little more than set the stage for the next cycle of violence. As the Israeli aggression on Gaza entered its third week, more than 1,000 Palestinian civilians were killed and some 6,000 more were injured. A grim and unpredictable future could befall the Middle East if Hamas is destroyed, a top Pentagon official said, warning that another rampaging extremist group akin to the Islamic State terrorists could rise up in its place. While Lieutenant General Michael Flynn criticized Hamas for exhausting finite resources of the Gaza Strip to build a network of tunnels for the purpose of fighting Israel, he nevertheless said that destroying the group would only lead to a widening of the regional conflict and probably an extremist group fighting in its stead. With over 1,000 Palestinians now dead since Israel commenced the ground phase of its 20-day-old operation, a tentative 24-hour ceasefire ended on Sunday, with hostilities renewing. The pause in fighting was intended to open up a humanitarian corridor for food and medical care, but as Israel offered to extend the ceasefire, it also warned that it would retaliate if Hamas continued to fire rockets from the Gaza territory. In Egypt, Egyptian troops have killed 14 jihadists in shootouts in the Restav Sinai Peninsula, scene of an insurgency since the ouster of President Mohamed Morsi, the army said on Sunday. It said that 47 people were arrested in the clashes Saturday that state news agency MENA said broke out near Sheikh Zweid in northern Sinai. Also on Saturday, 4 children were killed when a mortar round crashed in their home in Al-Jura, a suspected bastion for Islamist militants. Officials said that the mortar attack apparently targeted soldiers and police combing the area for militants who had shot dead 2 senior officers. Militant attacks have surged since the army overthrew Morsi in July 2013 and cracked down on his supporters. The militant attacks usually target security personnel, but they have also led to civilian casualties. The military has poured armor and soldiers into the peninsula to quell the militants, who have also struck Cairo and other cities using car bombs. In Libya, at least 15 people died when a residential building was hit during a rocket attack in Tripoli, Libya. The building, which housed Egyptian workers, was completely destroyed by the explosion. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry issued a statement warning its citizens to avoid traveling to Libya due to heightened tensions in the country. 3 years after the fall of former President Muammar al-Gaddafi, Libya has slipped into political chaos, with the new government and army unable to control former rebels and militias. In Yemen, 2 soldiers and 10 jihadists were killed on Sunday in attempted car bomb attacks on army posts and subsequent clashes in the southern province of Abyan, a military official said. He said that dozens of suspected al-Qaeda militants took part in simultaneous attacks on 3 army posts in Al-Mahfad area of Abyan. 2 car bombs exploded before reaching their targets, while a third went off at the gate of a base, he added. The alertness of the soldiers foiled the militants' attempt to seize the military posts, the official said, declining to be named. He said that 2 soldiers were killed and 11 wounded, while 7 of the assailants died in gunfights in addition to the 3 suicide bombers. In late April, the army launched a ground offensive against Al-Qaeda in Abyan and nearby Shabwa province. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is active across several parts of Yemen, taking advantage of a collapse of central authority during a 2011 uprising that ousted veteran President Ali Abdullah Saleh. And finally, in Ukraine, more than 40 Ukrainian soldiers have abandoned their military posts and crossed into Russian territory, stating that they refuse to fight against their own people, a Russian Federal Security Service spokesperson said. All of the soldiers were able to cross into Russia at the Donetsk checkpoint, the spokesperson added. Meanwhile, a Russian hospital near the Ukrainian border has been treating wounded Ukrainian soldiers. Some of them have expressed their unwillingness to fight for the Ukrainian army, blaming mobilization laws for forcing them to do so. Ukrainian soldiers claim that high-ranking officers rarely come to the front line, and when they do, they try to leave as soon as possible, preferably before dark. On Friday, mothers and wives of Ukrainian soldiers sent to fight in eastern Ukraine knelt during a demonstration asking President Petro Poroshenko to end the military offensive. That's all for today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dima Yunus. Good night.